afternoon. Kolkata, a city of joy, is privileged to celebrate the unveiling of Amish Tripathi's latest book, War of Lanka, which is the author's fourth book in the Ramchandra series. May I now invite Ms. Shilpa Sethi, Chairperson of YFlow Kolkata, to say a few words about the Prabha Khaitan Foundation and FICCI YFlow, and then take us through to the launch of the book.
Good afternoon, everyone. Prabha Khaitan Foundation, in association with FICCI YFlow, is delighted to host Amish Tripathi's book launch in the dazzling venue of Hyatt Regency under the auspice of its stellar literary initiative called Kitaab. Today, in conversation with Mr. Tripathi, we have Ms. Aarti Gupta, past chairperson of Flow Kanpur. Let's welcome Mr. Amish Tripathi and conversationalist Ms. Aarti Gupta with a big round of applause, please. I, Shilpa Sethi, Chairperson of YFlow Kolkata, welcome you all to this spectacular book launch event in Kolkata. The foundation, in association with FICCI YFlow, Hyatt Regency Kolkata, and SR's Women of Kolkata, has curated today's book launch event to unveil Mr. Amish Tripathi's newest book on the blog, War of Lanka. Based on the stories of Ramayana, one of the greatest epics, Tripathi's book, War of Lanka, is a celebration of the awe-inspiring cultural heritage of India. This much-awaited book merges the parallel multilinear narratives of the first three books, Ram, Sita, and Ravan, into a single narrative. The fourth book, War of Lanka, is a common narrative from the kidnapping of goddess Sita till the death of Ravan. Before we start the event, please allow me to say a few words about Prabha Khaitan Foundation. Prabha Khaitan Foundation is a Kolkata-based non-profit trust which was established in the 1980s by the late Dr. Prabha Khaitan, an eminent literature enthusiast, cultural activist, and staunch feminist. The foundation dedicatedly works to connect readers to the literary creations of authors and poets and showcases talented musicians, dancers, and performing artists through praiseworthy literary and cultural initiatives. Each initiative of the foundation enjoys a global identity and niche audience, creating the finest experiences and cultural landmarks on the global map. The foundation's activities and initiatives echoes the spirit of the national philosophy, unity and diversity. Among the bouquet of boutique literary initiatives, Kitaab holds a special place as it celebrates the birth of every new book and provides a platform for authors to showcase their newest literary creations to a discerning audience. The foundation has an active presence in more than 40 cities in India and overseas. The foundation enjoys the patronage of Shree Cement Limited and is ably assisted by distinguished associates, partners, and SR's Women of India in its effort to create a cultural capital. Young FICCI Ladies Organization, or as we call it YFlow, is the young chapter of FICCI Women Organization. FLOW is the female wing of Federation of Indian Chamber of Commerce of India Industry, FICCI. Young FLOW was launched in 2004 in Delhi. It's a unique platform for young women from diverse professional and entrepreneurial backgrounds to interact with each other, learn, explore new avenues, and launch their ideas in a supportive and nurturing environment. The primary objective of YFlow is to promote entrepreneurship and professional excellence in women. It acts as a catalyst for the social and economic advancement of women and society at large, and endeavors to make women aware of their strengths through its educational and vocational training programs, talks, seminars, panel discussions, and workshops on a vast range of subjects, especially concerning women and businesses. Allow me now to say a few words about the author and our conversationalist. Mr. Amish Tripathi is a diplomat and author. Amish published his first book in 2010 and has written 10 books, both fiction and non-fiction, till date, including the recently released War of Lanka. His books have sold 6 million copies and have been translated into 20 languages. Critics have said that his books are backed by tremendous research, deep thought, a rooted pride in India, and a liberal progressive outlook. The Week magazine acknowledged Amish as the fastest-selling author in Indian publishing history. Forbes India has regularly ranked him among the top 100 most influential celebrities in India. Amish was also selected as an Eisenhower Fellow, a prestigious American program for outstanding leaders from across the world in 2014. He won the 21st Century Icon Award in the UK in 2021 and the Golden Book Award for his novel Suhel Dev in 2022. He is also a host for TV documentaries, including for Discovery TV's highly acclaimed Legends of the Ramayana with Amish. He has taken over as the Minister, Culture at the Indian High Commission in the UK and the Director at the Nehru Centre in London in October 2019. Amish is an alumnus of the prestigious Indian Institute of Management, Calcutta, and he was given the Distinguished Alumnus Award by IIM Calcutta in 2017. He's worked for 14 years in financial services industry before turning into a full-time writer. Ms. Aarti Gupta is an Ehsaas woman of Kanpur. She's an eminent member of Wiki Flow. Ms. Gupta cherishes a deep love for literature. I would now like to call upon Ma'am Isha Datta.
Yes, Mr. Amish Tripathi and Ms. Aarti Gupta to join us on the stage, please. I'd also like to request my fellow Ehsaas women of Kolkata, Ms. Donna Ganguly and Malika Verma to join us on stage, as well as Ms. Shilpa Sethi, Chairperson YFlow Kolkata, Ms. Anindita Chatterjee, Executive Trustee of the Prabha Khaitan Foundation, and Manisha Jain, Branding and Communication Chief of Prabha Khaitan Foundation to join us.
Shall we open this or let them all get to their email? Okay.
Very good afternoon, everyone. Welcome, Amish.
Thank you.
Literary phenomena. You know, you 12 years of writing, 10 books, 6 million copies sold. A huge, huge congratulations to you, and especially for the book number 4 of the Ramchandra series. I must admit, I read it cover to cover in 24 hours, so it was fantastic. Couldn't keep it down. I've read all 10 books, so a huge fan. You know, before I focus on the book, my first question is, what was that inner calling that made a banker convert to an author, and that to an Indian mythology? I would have expected something about stock market.
Stock markets, yeah. Stock markets or maybe campus romance novels. Look, the point is actually I wasn't really looking to be an author. I was always a voracious reader. In my family, everyone reads a lot. I read on average at least 5-6 books per month. I've been reading at that pace for decades. But I never displayed any, and I've said this often, I don't hide it, I never displayed any creative abilities when I was young. Which is why often my friends, even from IIM Calcutta, they still ask me, "Sach bata, actually kisne likha hai?" And I started writing the Shiva trilogy. Actually, it began as a pure philosophy thesis, actually. And then it slowly got converted into an adventure. The philosophy thesis was essentially an answer to this question, what is evil? And then it slowly got converted into an adventure, the idea being to convey that philosophy in the wrapper of a story. That's how it emerged. And I was as surprised as anyone else that it took off. And then I wrote the second book, and that also took off. Then I resigned from my book.
And took off, and how? Like 6 million copies. Amazing. All started by...
So initially it was rejected by every publisher though.
Story of every startup, huh?
I self-published my first book actually. No, seriously, I self-published my first book.
So, Amish, with the Ramchandra series, you've drawn the base narrative from a tale that's known to almost every Indian, you know, a tale as old as time, one might say. Did you feel any added pressure for adapting such a foundational scripture?
Good question. I think one will feel pressure if one thinks, if I would think that I am the one, the genius adapting this. But if I realize what the truth is, that I'm not the one adapting it, I am just, I'm not the one adapting it. I genuinely believe that. I actually believe the stories are a blessing. It's difficult to explain. I've said it often. I actually open the laptop and a parallel universe opens up.
Oh, wow.
And I just record what I see. I can actually see those characters. I can hear their voices. I can feel their emotions. I can hear their thoughts. In many ways, that parallel universe is more real than this universe that we live in. Which is why I love writing so much. It's the only part of my life where I'm completely instinctive, completely emotion-driven. Otherwise, I'm a very left-brain, logical, rational. I'm a BSc Maths graduate. So, as left-brain banker, as I'm Calcutta, So, I'm Calcutta, as I'm sure you're aware, is the more quantitative of the IIMs. So every other part of my life, I'm very rational, logical. This is the only part of my life I'm completely instinctive. So it just flows. It's not that I'm trying to adapt something. It just comes to me. It's Lord Shiva's blessings, and I just record what I see. If I do it that way, it's actually the easiest job in the world. I don't have to do anything. He's doing the work. I'm just a medium.
Lovely. I totally understand the logical side. I'm an economist myself, so but no creative side like you. So
no, but in our ancient way, there was this belief that we need a balance between the left brain and the right brain. In this modern westernized world, we have this cult of rationality.
Yes.
Right? And there is a space, of course, for the rational, right? And I'm as rational as they come in many other parts of my life. In my contract negotiations, so I made money even from my first book. So I negotiated my contract well. My wallet has the currency notes in my wallet are organized denomination-wise, facing right side up. I'm that obsessive. Right? But books for me is like, is the right brain, complete emotions. I feel it's a spiritual experience. In our ancient way, it was believed that the right brain is the seat of the Devi, of the goddess.
Yeah.
It's the seat of emotions, the seat of instinct, the seat of creativity. And you know how it is with a goddess. There's not always a logic or rationale, right? You go with the emotions, right? And we must do all creative, all of us must find something creative. It balances us, right? The Lord Shiva without, Parvati Ma is imbalanced, and vice versa. So our ancient education system used to attempt to find a balance between the two. Our modern Western education system is very left brain, very logical, rational. That's important, but it can't be the only thing that you do.
The Western education kind of boxes you into type A, type B personalities,
It's a cult of rationality.
Sure. Following up on that question, you've also taken a lot of interesting fictional liberties with both Meluha and Ramchandra series. Lots of intricate backstories and characters added. How do you make this decision as a writer to fictionalize parts of the narrative or to keep the original script? Is it about fleshing out the missing stories, or is it about something which inspires you creatively?
This thing of that will match the original version gives rise to the obvious question that what is the original version, right? So, pop quiz out here, is Lakshman Rekha there in the Ramayana? I love asking this repeatedly. Who says Lakshman Rekha is not there in the Ramayana? One. Anyone else? Anyone else wants to be brave? Yeah, a round of applause for her. She's right, actually. The original Valmiki Ramayana does not have the Lakshman Rekha, actually. It's mentioned in some of the later devotional versions of the Ramayana. So, the Bengali version is the Kritibhashi Ramayana, which is one of the devotional versions of the Ramayana. Kamba Ramayanam is also devotional. Ramcharitmanas Goswami Tulsidas Ji is the most famous of the devotional Ramayans. So, many of these have the Lakshman Rekha, but even they are not exactly like how it is in the 1980s television serial. The version that all of us modern Indians had of the Lakshman Rekha, Lakshmanji takes out his arrow and draws a line. Yeah, that's a 1980s television serial. Okay. But I respect the 80s television serial. Ramanand Sagarji did a good job. But the point was, he took his own interpretation of it. And to me, this is symbolic of the Indian way. There's a lovely line, Hari Ananta, Hari Katha Ananta, that the forms of God are many and the stories of the gods are as many, right? And each age, each person who makes, and it's not like liberty. This creative liberty is a very Western, term. The entire aura around it is this brave artist taking on the evil establishment and doing something new. That's not how those of us who write or have the honor of writing something on the Mahabharata or the Ramayana or our Puranas. We don't see ourselves as brave rebels, doing something new. We see ourselves as very devoted people who are just making another interpretation at the feet of our god and goddesses, right? So it's just another very respectful interpretation. If you do it that way, then it's just what comes to you, and you just write it that way. Which is why you'll find there are so many versions of our stories, right? It's not just the Ramayana. You'll be surprised how many versions there are of the Mahabharata. Sure. You'll be surprised even in traditional temple worship there are so many different interpretations. So Lord Kartik, I'm sure everyone is aware of out here. We worship him as the son of the goddess. So is he a bachelor or is he married? Bachelor? Everyone say, who all say bachelor? Raise your hands.
No, bachelor.
Yeah? Lord Kartik is a bachelor? Okay, how many say he is married? Yeah? And the rest have no opinion. So
secretly married.
Correct. Now you will notice I raise my hands both times, right? Yeah, because in North India, at least everywhere, Maharashtra northwards, including West Bengal, the traditional thing was Lord Kartik is a bachelor, right? The traditional thing. So much, and he's the general of the gods. So in many parts, at least in UP, I think in West Bengal as well, women wouldn't enter a Lord Kartik temple because they were scared their fathers or brothers or husbands would go join the army, right? And they didn't want them to do that, because they might die. But in South India, any South Indians here?
I'm from
Yeah. So in South India, Lord Kartik has two wives, Valli ji and Sena ji, right? Again, this shows in every area. So, and in South India, by the way, women enter Lord Kartik temples very peacefully, no problem, right? Because they are not scared of losing their brothers or husbands or fathers to war, okay, out there. So the thing is that even in forms of worship, this is an intuitive Indian way. We are comfortable with multiple truths. As long as you do it with respect. That's what I do with my stories.
So yours is another devotional version. I like how you put it, of the Ramayana.
Look, I certainly don't see myself as some westernized, person trying to reform. I'm not like that. I'm very proudly Indian. I'm putting a different interpretation. That's all. A different, respectful interpretation.
Lovely. Amish, I'm also a huge fan of the multilinear approach which you've used for the Ramchandra series, right? I believe it's called the Rashomon effect.
There's a Japanese, you've done your research?
Yes.
There's a Japanese movie called Rashomon, yeah.
Of course, and where there are contradicting versions or different perspectives presented from different characters of the same event. And what made you decide to use this approach? Do you feel that it added depth to the story?
Yeah, so what you're talking about, the Rashomon effect, it's based on a Japanese movie called Rashomon. Anyone's seen that movie? Akira Kurosawa? Yeah, it's a classic movie, man. And Akira Kurosawa is one of the finest filmmakers, and I love watching world cinema as well, different interpretations. So this entire movie was the story told from the perspective of different characters. And when you see the first character's perspective, you're completely convinced that is the correct version. Then you see the second character and you're, confused. Maybe the second character. Then you see the third character. By that time, you're thoroughly confused. All three have a point, right? So So, and it was a fascinating movie, a fascinating thing of storytelling. And you see the Rashomon effect in life as well, right? So, I mean, I'm assuming many are married out here, and in a fight that happens between a husband and wife, the Rashomon effect often comes in, right? Because
Not really. The wives are always right, right?
yeah, no. I'll tell you what happens. The wife is very clear why the fight is happening, and the husband is thoroughly confused. What did I do? Right? That's called the Rashomon effect. Okay. Two different characters have a completely different background. It's the same facts, the same situation, right? And this is actually a very insightful point. So much of what we see of the world is actually driven by our observer bias. Right? This is something that's actually even used in the concept of theoretical physics, so that the version of the parallel universe that we see is defined by our observer bias. And one of the key mathematical problems, right, in theoretical physics, that there is something called the universal constant, which ensures that dark energy and dark matter, I'm sure you're aware that, practically everything that you see in the universe, stars, everything, the matter, makes up only 4% of the universe's density. 96% of the universe's density is made up of these two mysterious phenomena, dark energy, dark matter, which theoretical physicists have still not completely understood. The thing is that the interplay between these two forces or phenomena ensures that the universe remains stable. Right? If the dark energy was a little stronger, the universe could have dissipated. If dark matter was a little stronger, universe should have crunched in. And then that balance is called the universal constant. So the problem that most physicists say is that how did this universal constant come up? Why is it not another constant? Right? Sure. Which could have had the universe go in either direction. And the theory is actually there are parallel universes, and our observer bias defines which universe we are in, the constant that we are in. So anyway, sorry, slightly...
We've got a mini physics lesson in it as well. Thank you for that.
The point I'm trying to make is the perception you come with defines the truth that you see. So there are three primary characters in the Ramayana, and all three of them would have their own perceptions, their own truths, or what all happened with their life, right? So Lord Ram, Ram, sign of Vikshvaku, tells the tale from Lord Ram's birth to the kidnapping of goddess Sita. Sita, warrior of Mithila, tells it from her birth to her kidnapping, and Ravan, enemy of Aravartha, from his birth to his kidnapping. When you see the three backstories, like in Rashomon effect, you understand deeply why they do what they do. And then you're prepared for the fourth book. Then you can understand why they're taking those decisions. And then you understand the philosophies, the discussions in this book a lot deeper. That's why I thought it'll be a good idea. It's a little complicated. I think my readers like complicated.
No, we loved
average,
it.
I believe on average my readers are more intelligent. They like complex, I think.
No. I personally loved all the three series, and it tied up beautifully in this book. So, Amish, I have to say, I really enjoyed how you empowered Sita's character in Sita, the warrior of Mithila. It was so refreshing to see her portrayed as a strong warrior princess in her own right, as capable of being Ram's equal. And it was equally intriguing to see Ram as an inspiration for many husbands everywhere. He was supportive to Sita. He was not threatened by her power or glory. Did you intentionally mean to show that women should also be celebrated for courage and independence?
I'd love to take credit for it, and because that makes me appear very cool. But genuinely, it's sad that our education system doesn't teach enough of our own traditional scriptures. If we read that, we would know that those who argue for equality between men and women are not being Western or Westernized in any way. In fact, we are being truly Indian, because all our more, especially our scriptures which are more than 1,000 years old. So stuff which is written before the 10th, 11th century, you'll find extremely respectful of women. So, Sita Ma is shown as a warrior. Yeah, it's not my creation actually. There's a version of the Ramayana called the Adbhut Ramayana. How many have heard of it? Adbhut Ramayana? Yeah, it's also credited to Valmiki ji, by the way. So Valmiki ji, the original author, composer of the Ramayana, had written 3 versions: Valmiki Ramayana, Ananda Ramayana, and Adbhut Ramayana. In Adbhut Ramayana, there are 2 Ravans, and the more powerful Ravan is the elder Ravan, who's killed by Sitama. In that version, and written by Valmiki ji. Right? So I didn't create this, actually it's there. I've just maybe in a way just reinterpreted it and brought it once again into consciousness, perhaps, at least among some readers. There's a version of, yada yadai dharmasya, everyone knows the line, obviously. So there's a version of that line in the Adbhut Ramayana: yada yadai dharmasya glanir bhavati suvrata abhyuthanam adharmasya tada prakruti sambhava. That remember, O keeper of righteous vows, whenever adharma rises or dharma is in decline, the sacred feminine will incarnate. And so the one that we've heard in the Mahabharata is Lord Krishna will incarnate. In this one it says the sacred feminine will incarnate, and she will defend dharma, she will protect us. Which is our oldest scripture? Indian? Rig Veda? Yeah? So the Rig Veda is hymns written by rishis, who are equivalent of the prophets and messiahs of the Middle Eastern religion. The Rig Veda also has hymns written by rishikas, women rishis. We had the equivalent of women prophets and messiahs in ancient India. Show me any other culture which had that. Right? We had women who ruled in their own name. Prabhavati Gupta, Rudrama Devi. They weren't like wives of the king or something. They ruled in their own name. Right? Rudrama Devi used to lead her army into battle. We had women doctors, women scientists. Everyone knows that the oldest universities in the world were actually in India, right? Takshashila, Nalanda. Yeah. Anyone's heard of the Vallabhi University? Ancient university. It was destroyed, I think, by the Khiljis, if I'm not mistaken. It was founded by a woman, the Vallabhi University, one of the greatest universities of the ancient world. It was founded by a woman. This was the status of women in ancient India. So what I show in my books is actually nothing new. It's what our ancient society was like.
How true, but we will give you credit for bringing it to...
Women should applaud for this, man.
Yes.
And please argue with our politicians, teach all this in our education system. We don't know. So we get surprised that, when someone, it's there in our text. We just need to be taught all this.
No, and like I was saying, we have to give you credit for bringing it to limelight, so kudos for that. Amish, was it difficult to write, following up on that Sita question, from a female character's perspective, the process, was it any different than you wrote your earlier, either the Naga series or the, writing the Ram or the Ravan book?
But I don't write from a first-person narrative. So unlike, say, what Jeeves, I'm sure everyone likes P.G. Woodhouse. Yeah. So Jeeves is written from a first-person narrative. I write from a third-person narrative. So I'm like a fly on the wall. So it can be various different characters. It wasn't really that different.
That different from the other 2 books.
Yeah.
From Meluha to the War of Lanka, I love the strategy parts of the battle scene. They're my favorite, especially the touch of science and technology used back then. How did you research and come up with these complexities? And I apologize to anyone who's not read the book, but you have to read it. Like the battle scenes are so detailedly explained. It was fantastic. It was like I was sitting out there in the battlefield, kind of a thing. So
thank you. I read a lot, actually, and there are fantastic texts from our ancient times on ancient Indian war strategies, which are fascinating. There was a time when India used to beat back every invader. Our war strategies were really cutting edge. And we had among the finest warriors, even the finest mercenaries, actually. So many Indian soldiers used to fight in other armies, actually, across. So I read up a lot on this. I travel to many of these places. I also have it's kind of a morbid fascination with how death used to happen in those days, and I keep reading up on things like this or watching programs like this. So all of it kind of goes into the books. That's why sometimes the violence can be a little gruesome, but I try and keep it as less gruesome as I can.
I could see touches of that in the last battle scene.
Not that I enjoy that. It's just maybe it helps in writing. The kind of books I write. The fact that I have this fascination. So
a bit of Game of Thrones in this.
not too much, but.
Amish, in Ravana, enemy of Aryavarta, the brotherly relationship with Kumkaran was something that added a lot of warmth to a very complex villain, if I'm allowed to call Ravan that. It must have been a delicate task to find humanity in someone like Ravan. And what was your thought process in etching this character? Or this side of Ravan, actually?
Actually, again, our perception of Ravan is also in many ways defined by modern television serials, to be honest. Though the 1980s television serial, to be fair, showed some of the strengths of Ravan, Ramanand Sagarji's. But again, if you read the original versions of the Ramayana, Ravan is not just a thug, he's not just a gunda, right? That's what makes him a very intriguing and fascinating character, right? Because he was super talented. He was a brilliant intellectual. He was a Pandit of the Vedas. He'd composed hymns to Lord Shiva, which, Shiva chant to this day, for example. He'd invented musical instruments. He was a fierce warrior. He was a good administrator. So he had a lot of strengths. And these are shown in many of the ancient versions of the Ramayana. But his weaknesses are also shown. That no control over his ego, no control over his desires, which is why he abused so many women. No control over his anger. So those were his weaknesses, which led to his downfall. And Ravan, even in terms of folk traditions, because in the modern day we are told Ravan could be a Lankan or a Tamilian. There's no ancient text which says that actually. The oldest temples to Ravan are actually in the north. He was most probably born just ahead of Noida. There's a place called Vishrak. So he was probably born there. Yeah, he was a Delhi boy actually. Whenever I say that, people, hence the anger issues. But his oldest temple is actually at this place called Vishrak, just ahead of Noida. His wife, Mandodari, was from Mandsaur, which is on the Rajasthan MP border. And he'd actually gone to Lanka and, kicked out the original ruler, Kuber. So, it makes him a very fascinating character. His journey, his, so I guess, again, my book is closer to the ancient versions of the way they looked at him. Rather than the more modern, more simplistic. We've absorbed many of these westerns, very simplistic, black, white, good, evil. We've absorbed many of those things, which is why perhaps we see Ravan in a particular light in the modern day. In ancient times, no, our ancestors saw things in a very nuanced way.
Sure, it was really fascinating to see this side of how you've depicted him. Amish, outside of your books, 4 jobs simultaneously, it should be mentioned, you work as the cultural diplomat with the Indian government, you host TV documentaries, a producer and an author. I would not ask you which role do you enjoy the most, because writing. I'm sure, of course, I was going to say that. I'm sure writing is closest to your heart. But maybe tell the audience something you enjoy about each role. What do you enjoy most about each role?
Good, interesting question. The documentary host role, in fact, I just got into. We just did a documentary for Discovery TV. I don't know how many of you have seen that. No, thank you. Those of you who haven't, it's out on Discovery TV or on Discovery Plus, I think. Yeah, Discovery Plus. You check it out. It's a 3-episode series. The pleasure of that is I get to do things which I like doing, which is, traveling, going to historical or our cultural places, talking to experts who know more about a particular subject than I do and learning from them. So I get to do all that and actually get paid for it. So, so I like this job. The movie production thing, yeah. So I've started my own company in Mumbai, Immortal Studios, and we are in alliance with partners. We are producing one of my own books into a movie, Suhail Dev. The High Commission role, it's the first time I'm working with the government. I meet a lot of very interesting people thanks to that. Donna Ganguly, one among them. And it's been a huge learning experience because I'm a private sector guy and we are like, chalo abhi decision lo and get it moving. Whereas the government, there is a method to how things work. And being a part of the cultural diplomacy core is a real privilege because I think India's status is rising more and more. We will become a far more serious player in any serious power with enough hard power then gets into the soft power space. India is the 5th largest economy in the world right now. We just went ahead of the UK. I'm sure all of you are aware of that. The last time that happened was 150 years ago when our GDP was higher than the UK's. And over chasing power parity basis, India's per capita income will become higher than every single European's per capita income. The last time that happened was 900 years ago. We are going to very rapidly come back to the status that we had a long, long time back. And as a part of that, as hard power rises, naturally your cultural influence will also rise.
Of course.
It's a very exciting time to be in this space, very exciting time to be an Indian. And I get to be a part of this journey because of my diplomatic role.
Amazing. Amish, you've reignited interest in ancient scriptures for a lot of young Indians, both living in India and abroad, You've made characters exciting, relatable for modern readers. What do you have to say to the defenders of tradition who insist on old-school, deified approach to these figures? Do you see worship coexisting with relatability and modern sensibilities?
Perhaps maybe not in other countries or religions. In our country, yeah. And in fact, that's the way it has always been. You see the way we approach our gods and goddesses, it's almost like we have an emotional relationship with them.
Of course.
I don't know how many of you saw this wonderful snap I tweeted out. It was a viral photo of a very small, boy. I think it was in Maharashtra, and there was a lovely small murti of Ganesh ji. It was probably before a Ganesh Visarjan. It was raining, and the boy had opened the umbrella and was holding it over Ganeshji, letting himself get wet. Okay? And because that was Bal Ganesh, and he was, I have to take care of him, right? And that photo just in many ways showed the way we approach our gods. We have emotions attached to them. We see them as, as our fathers, as our mothers, as our siblings, and we are attached to them. I think that's one of the reasons we're the only pagan culture, quote-unquote pagan culture, that is still alive. Because the gods and goddesses are not distant from us. They are very, very dear, very close to us. And this is the way India's culture has always been. So again, I don't think I'm doing anything new actually. You see that in the way the Durga Pandal, the Pandals happen, and the way Ganesh Visarjan happens in Mumbai. Yes, we have various different relationships, including the devotional, looking up relationship as well. We have so many relationships.
Sure. I would love to continue asking questions, but let's wrap up with two interesting questions. What's your future literary endeavor? Is there any plans to focus on other epic narratives in India? And I did see the last page saying to be continued. So, what's next?
Okay, as far as the Ramchandra series is concerned, the 4th book will give you a sense of conclusion. It ends where Ravan has been killed, Lord Ram and Goddess Sita have returned to Ayodhya, and the first Diwali, the first Deepavali is being celebrated. So it ends where the traditional Ramayana ends for most modern Indians. There is a 5th book, which I will release many years later. That is a book, because I might do another series in the middle, but this will give you a sense of conclusion, don't worry. That book links the Ramchandra series and the Shiva trilogy. one of the ways of seeing the Ramchandra series, it's a 1500 year prequel to the events of the Shiva trilogy. So that fifth book will actually connect these two. That fifth book is called Rise of Meluha. So it will connect the Ramchandra series to the Shiva trilogy. In terms of other ideas, I have various story ideas, one on the Mahabharata, one on various story ideas. But I think the one I'm not sure as yet, but the one I think I might take up is something very different, actually set in the modern day, set in London and India. It has elements of gaming, of time travel, perhaps even aliens. It's a very, very different genre. I'm very excited by it. The reason I want to take it up is there's this person I desperately want to impress. His name is Neil, my son. He's 13 years old. And much to my chagrin, I am not his number one author. I'm his number two author. He keeps telling me, Dad, you're a very close number two, but you're not number one. Because, you don't have dragons and you don't have fantasy. And he said, I want to see that. So I'm going to write something which is, I have to be his favorite author.
Who is his favorite author, Amish, if I may ask?
His favorite author?
Yeah.
अरे यार साला George R.R. Martin साला कंबल पिटाई करनी चाहिए उसे.
So my last question is, we all read Amish Tripathi, but what does Amish Tripathi read? And do you have any inspirational writers? And what do you read to unwind, relax?
Actually, I read a lot. As I said, I read 5-6 books per month. So to give an all-time favorite thing is kind of difficult. And I read non-fiction. 90% of my reading is non-fiction. So I normally answer this is off the books I'm reading right now, which one is kind of inspiring. So I'm reading a book by Kevin Rudd, An Inevitable War, ? Kevin Rudd is a former Australian Prime Minister, as I'm sure many of you are aware, and he's written a very interesting scholarly book on the geopolitical conflict between the US and China. And this is something that's going to impact all of us. All of us need to understand what's going on. The next 10 years is going to be difficult. There's going to be a lot of chaos. And we've seen the last 2-3 years already. And a lot of it is driven by US-China geopolitical conflicts and their relationship. So this book explores that in great detail. It's a very insightful read. Kevin Rudd.
Wonderful. Thank you, Amish. This has been absolutely delightful. I must say once again that highly recommend everyone to read this. It was a bit goosebumpy because Diwali is right around the corner, and actually reading, Ravan dying and Ram and Sita going back to Ayodhya. I'm really looking forward to burning those diyas. So thank you so much. Perfect timing. I think we have time for some audience questions. So if we can take up some questions from the audience.
Hi. Huge fan, again, reader of all the books.
Thank you.
And I actually want to tell you a small instance followed by 2 questions, if you don't mind. The first book, Meluha, when I was reading, I was in a flight and I was sitting next to this very old man who saw and got intrigued by the cover. And he's like, what are you reading and what is it about? And the moment that I said that Shiva is being depicted as a human being, he got offended, and how? Saying that, oh my God, are you telling me that all my beliefs for 80 years of my life are going down the drain with this book? So I just wanted to ask you that depiction of Shiva being a human, and what's your thought behind it? And the second one that you kept saying right now in the interview, that Ravan was the one who wrote hymns for Lord Shiva. And then the series for the Shiva, he keeps praying to Lord Ram. So how does that happen? That is kind of, a bit of it is contradicting, isn't it?
Okay. One, the Indian, the dharmic approach to the divine, can be seen at 4 levels, if I'm simplifying it a little bit. One is the Nirgun Nirakar concept, formless God. You can't even call that God a he or a she, so because it's beyond gender. We Shaivites call that God also Shiva, the Nirgun Nirakar. Then there's the Akar concept of God, where God takes a form to come closer to us. So like how we see Lord Shiva in the traditional form, Lord Vishnu. No, Akar, they've taken a form. So Nirgun Nirakar is no form, right? So how we traditionally see Lord Vishnu or Lord Shiva, with the Trishul, etc. That's Akar. And the third concept is the avatar concept, where the gods or goddesses take birth in our world, on Bhulok, and then as human beings or as anything else, there can be a Varaha avatar, Matsya avatar, and fulfill their karma and go back up. And the fourth is where a human being becomes a god, right? Like Gautam Buddha. And in fact, actually, that's what Namaste, everyone knows what Namaste is actually supposed to mean, right? It's not hello. It's actually, I bow to the divine within you, right? That's what Namaste is actually supposed to mean, which is actually a connection to that old thing, that a human being can become divine. I find this very inspiring, this concept. And then you'll find that there are stories across from our scriptures which have approached stories of the divine from all four perspectives. So the plays of Bhasa, for example, the greatest Sanskrit playwright, Pancharatra, etc., all actually approach it, which are 2,000 years old or something, all approach it from this human beings becoming divine perspective. So all four have their schools of philosophy in the Indian way. The ultimate truth is, of course, Nirgun Nirakar. But we get to understand that only when we get moksha, right? And none of us have understood that. How do we know that? We are still here, right? Because the moment we understand it, we'll become one with the divine. We will become divine. We'll become one with them. So that's the background on this. As far as Ravan writing hymns to the Mahadev and then Lord Shiva and Shiva trilogy looking at Lord Ram. Look, there is this hymn in the Rig Veda called the hymn of Keshan. Kesh, you know what it means, right? Hair. So Keshan means the long-haired one. Right? If you read that hymn, any Shaivite will tell you it's actually Lord Shiva being described. Because it says, his fame spread from the western sea to the eastern sea. That's what our ancestors called Arabian Sea and Bay of Bengal. He walked clothed in the sky, which is, without any clothes. We know Lord Shiva did that. He danced brilliantly. And the hymn ends with that, and Keshan sat and drank poison. We know he did that too. The interesting thing, it says, and Keshan sat and drank poison with Rudra. Okay. Now this is a hymn that's there in the Rig Veda. You'll notice many Shaivites who follow the Shaivite Puranas also, the way we look at Lord Shiva, who's very calm, who, yes, at times can lose his temper, but it's almost like like we almost have a right on him. We'll just say, you have to do this for us, I'm your devotee, you have to do it, right? Whereas in his Rudra form, it's a very different relationship. We're almost afraid of him, right? And you notice in the Shaivite Puranas, even the physical description of Lord Rudra is actually quite radically different from Lord Shiva's description. This coupled with the hymn on the Rig Veda, could it be, I don't know what the truth is, but could it be that Lord Rudra and Lord Shiva were both Mahadevs and two different forms, and the one that Ravan and Lord Ram worshipped was Lord Rudra, and Lord Shiva came after. Now, is this the truth? I don't know, but this is my attempt to kind of make sense of the contradiction. I don't know what the truth is, only Lord Shiva knows what the truth is, but this is my attempt.
Can I add in something?
Yes, ma'am.
I don't think so that Lord Shiva and Lord Rudra are different. It's just that, say, when Lord Shiva opens his third eye,
He becomes
and
Lord
when the
Rudra.
third eye opens, when the unjust comes
And he
to
becomes
play in
Rudra.
the world, and that is the time when he takes the form of Lord Rudra,
Fair.
and the Tandav starts, and
There's that interpretation
maybe
too.
that is the
Absolutely.
difference. And
One of the interesting things with an Indian mind is we are all very comfortable with contradictions. You'll notice most Indians can have contradictory thoughts in our own minds. So my books are written from the perspective of plausibility. So so there's no magic or fantasy elements in there. So within the book, someone will refer to Lord Shiva as Shiva, and I'll write it that way. But when I'm speaking normally, I can never just say just Shiva. I will say Lord Shiva. If you think about it, it's contradictory, but we Indians, we are comfortable with it. I'm talking about the theory that goes into my books, that's all.
I have some very basic question
Yes,
for
ma'am.
you. When is it that your interest in I'm not going to say mythology, but in our scriptures grew? I mean, when did you start reading about it in detail? And was it from a young age? Were you influenced by your family around or that? That is my first question. And the second one is, when you read these scriptures, do you read them in which form? What is your source? Like, are they written out in a language that you can read, or you go through interpretations, or what? These are.
Knowledge essentially comes from my family, good fortune of birth. Sadly, the education system we have is so colonial and still colonized. We learn very little about our own culture. The entire aim of our education system is padha likha ke bacche ko Angrez banao. I was lucky that the family I was born into was very deeply. My grandfather was a Pandit at Vishwanath Ji. He used to teach at Banaras Hindu University. My grandfather from my father's side, and my grandmother on my mother's side was also a teacher at Gwalior. So our family had that atmosphere. So good fortune of birth, I learned a lot from there. I heard many of these stories, which is the traditional way. You're supposed to hear and ask questions rather than just read, because you can't ask questions to a book. You understand deeply only when you ask questions. So I learned much of this actually the traditional way. I read a lot as well. I read in English and Hindi very comfortably. Sanskrit, my grandfather knew Sanskrit extremely well. He was a master's in Sanskrit as well from BHU. My father knew Sanskrit far better than I do, obviously, but not as well as my grandfather did, and mine is much lower. So I'm dependent more on English and Hindi. But these texts are all available on the web. Practically all our scriptures, not just our religious scriptures, many scientific texts, medical texts, they are all available on the web. Many of them have been scanned. So they are readable, but they need to be translated. And again, we are such unworthy descendants of really kick-ass ancestors that we haven't even translated most of these texts, let alone study them. So that's one of the sad things of the India of today. Hopefully we will improve and we'll start translating and studying many of these texts.
Yeah, so this is because you've really read the scriptures and you've done research over many years. In our religion, we have something called Devgon, Debarigon, that's how it's pronounced in Bengali, and Rakushgon. So how did this originate, the concept of Gon? And you had said that, I don't know, in Hindu astrology, the Gun thing.
Gana, okay.
Yeah,
okay.
So how did this idea come about? This, yes.
Dev
and there's
Gana,
Devari. So Dev is considered to be descendants of God. Devari is humans, and Rakshas is like, because that's how Ravana is associated with it. So how did this concept come about? And it's still
Very
prevalent.
Firstly, thank you for clarifying Gan, because I was thinking of Gaon, so for some reason, so I was on the wrong track. Sorry, I've studied in Calcutta, I should have caught on, but okay. Firstly, the Devas and Asuras are actually cousins. So I don't know how many of you know this. They are both descendants of Saptarishi Kashyap. The Devas from Aditi and the Asuras from Diti. But they're both, they're half brothers actually, not cousins. Same father, two different mothers. And the way we see Devas and Asuras, again in the modern day, we see Asuras as, green-skinned with horns, and that's, again, those are comic books actually. It's not the way it was described in ancient times. So the Devas had strengths and areas of improvement, as did the Asuras, right? And there were some Asuras who were very noble, like Prahlad, for example. Like Bali, for example, they were Asuras, right? And there were some devas who who did things that can be seriously questioned. Like what Lord Indra did. With Ahalya ji. That was wrong, right? What he did. Sorry? Yeah. Now, so actually, again, what I was saying earlier, our ancestors saw things in a far more nuanced way. It's only now that we are actually approaching what was a very nuanced, sophisticated culture with very, in my opinion, childish Western lenses. Because I've noticed the Westerners, Middle Easterners have this very deep desire to see everything in good, bad, black, white. They simply cannot see nuance. I see even, and I'm living in London right now, I see many liberals, apparently liberals, right? They have the same approach. Their liberalism is the universal liberalism. And all of you who don't agree with them are very obviously, evil. And they will bomb you to save you, like they did to Iraq and Libya. And I get shocked how many Western liberals actually believe they did something good in Libya. And I'm like, you should ask us brown-skinned people, man. I mean, I actually told one of them this, that whenever any Western liberal comes and tells us, I'm a white Western liberal, I want to come and save you, that's when we brown people run to the hills, because we know a few 100,000 of us are about to be killed, right? So you notice even modern liberalism in the West is very black, white, good, evil. You don't follow my truth, you will burn in hell for eternity. It's, in my mind, a very childish approach, because the real world is actually very nuanced. The real world is very complicated. Those who live in the real world know that it's not so black and white. It's not so easy to make decisions. So the environmental movement in the West, sorry, I'm kind of expanding this a bit, but you see the environmental movement in the West have made things into very simplistic things. Whereas if you see things in a more nuanced way, you will realize that choices are complicated, Like in Bangalore or in Chennai, should they have listened to the environmentalists and not built over those lakes? Hell yes, right? So there, the decision makers took a wrong call. But in Mumbai, to save 68 trees, you delay a metro by another year and a half when 200 slum dwellers are dying every month because of local trains. No, replant those 68 trees somewhere else, right? When you are comfortable with nuance, you will realize the world is complicated. You have to make complicated decisions. So even the Devas and Asuras, all our stories, actually if you read the original ones, are very nuanced. It's not so easy to have a straight black and white approach. So my suggestion would be, let's not look at it from Western lenses, let's look at it from our own lens, right? There's this Kannada movie that's come out, sorry, I'll just end with that, called Kantara. I don't know how many of you have seen that. I've heard a lot about it. I want to see it when I go back to London. And it speaks of, the environmental movement from an Indian, from what I can understand, I haven't seen the movie, Indian devotional perspective and of Bhutkal. But the entire thing is, we know that Bhut does not mean ghosts in our way. Bhut is just the past, right? And in our way, especially Shakta worshippers or Shaivites, it's not seen as something wrong or evil. It's another part of the universe. I mean, it's coming with Lord Shiva. How can there be, and it's a different way. We have to understand how to deal with it. But it's not so black and white. So even the Devas, Asuras have to be seen from that perspective. If you see it from that perspective, you understand the story is a lot deeper.
I have a last question.
I have another event to go for.
Yeah. Just a small question. I have a 4-year-old and I feel I went to a very anglicized school.
Yes, ma'am.
So my understanding is very Western. And I would like to read things to her, or are you planning to do a children's series so that it makes it easier for us parents?
I will certainly try a children's series, but there are many other authors in this space as well. There are many children's books. So many of the stories of Lord Krishna in childhood are a wonderful way to just introduce it. Yeah. Yeah, and so if you see, many of our, the stories of our gods and goddesses, because there's a different way you have to tell them when they are under 10. At that time, you can't talk about nuance. At that time, the basic morality is being built, right? Belief in nuance shouldn't mean that you should do immoral things. Right? And no one needs to tell us. We know what is moral and immoral. We all know, right? We should have that clarity and then do what is right. So under 10, it's a different thing. Beyond 10, it's a different level of schooling. I'm going to try and come out with children's books as well. I'll try my best. That'll be the 5th job then. But thank you, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Amish and Aarti. I think that was one of the most educative and interesting afternoons in a long, long time. May I request Donna Ganguly, SAS woman of Kolkata, to please come up and felicitate Amish. Are always special as they celebrate literature and the stellar creations of authors. Today, the Hyatt Regency and Kolkata paid host to a very special event, the unveiling of Amish Tripathi's latest book, War of Lanka, in the presence of literary enthusiasts of Kolkata. The enthralling conversation between Amish and Aarti made it an afternoon to cherish and remember. On behalf of Prabhakar Foundation, I, Isha Datta, SAS woman of Kolkata, express my sincerest gratitude to Mr. Amish Tripathi and Aarti Gupta. I would also like to thank Vicky Flow, patron Sri Cement Limited, and our venue and hospitality partner, Hyatt Regency. Last but not the least, a big round of applause to you, our amazing audience, your presence and support. Make today's Kitaab event successful and enjoyable. Stay happy, stay well, and have a good day.
One second, I just need to sign in. Hi.